Okay, I've got us right at the bottom of the hour, so let's stay on track and get started. We've got a good crowd joining us today. Thank you, welcome. My name is Thomas Meredith, and I will be moderating today's Power Up session, our last Power Up session of the year. This one titled Centralized versus Decentralized Approaches to Resource Management. What is best for my company? We know this decision on whether to centralize or decentralize resource management can be a bit controversial topic for many, but really excited that we're able to tee this topic up for discussion today. So quickly, just a few mentions before we get started. We have made a PDF copy of the deck available. It's there loaded in your GoToWebinar control panel, so feel free to download that if you wish. We are recording the session. You'll receive an email later today with a link to that recording, and we will have a brief question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Like I said, we know folks on the line probably have a few thoughts about this topic, so feel free to enter your questions into the GoToWebinar control panel. We'll pull those and have a session after the presentation. Okay, very good. Let's get started. Very excited to have with us today the Managing Director of the Resource Management Institute, Randy Mislovic. Randy, welcome. It's all yours.
Okay, terrific. Thomas, thanks. Just quick sound check. Do I sound loud and clear?
Loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We do have a large group today. It's been exciting watching our power-ups have been very well received. Thanks to all of you for participating. We hope you're getting value from all of these. And we're excited about it. We got a great roster of these coming up for 2019 as well. I want to do a special shout out to our sponsors, MavenLink, Upland Tenrocks, and Keyed-In Solutions. We appreciate their sponsorship of these power-ups and hope all you will give them a look-see if you're in the market for a PPM or PSA tool. All three of these are companies that are committed to delivering the very best they can in resource management capabilities for their tools. So I'm going to tee this centralized versus decentralized approaches to resource management up. What's best for my company? It's a terrific topic. 10 years ago or so, I was writing white papers about better resource management, and this was always one of the 5 things I listed as things that tend to get in the way when it comes to doing better resource management. So anyway, we'll talk more about that here in a moment. For those of you not familiar with the RMI, we are dedicated to the advancement of resource and workforce management thought leadership, and that is the essence of what the Resource Management Institute does, and we're focused on from a standpoint of your business operations and a value point of view. We're focused on helping you solve certain business problems related to, there's a direct tie. Data doesn't lie between resource management and project performance. We believe the number one driver of project failures is in the resource management area. So we're helping companies with that, better resource utilization, leading to improved ROI on your investment in human capital, better client satisfaction or internal customer satisfaction if you're an enterprise IT group. And latest, while we've had focus here before, we're going to put a whole new level of focus on employee engagement and retention. And matter of fact, our Power Up for the first quarter is on that very topic of employee engagement. Hope you'll join us on March 27th for that one. We currently provide in-depth data and research specific to project-based teams for professional consulting services, enterprise IT, and our newest edition, product development. And you'll be seeing a lot more from us going forward. But any organization, quite frankly, that is human capital intensive, particularly those that are in project-based work, can get value from participating in the RMI. And hope that all of you that are on here, if you're not a part of the RMI, that you join, because joining the RMI, quite frankly, is free. You just hit the join button and we get asked for a little bit of information, and then you can participate in our events and research and other information going forward. And you can opt out, by the way, at any time if you so choose to do so. There are really kind of 3 big categories of things we do as the RMI for our membership. One is provide opportunities to collaborate, and events like these would be a good example for those of you who made it to the Resource Management Global Symposium in Dallas a couple of months or so ago. We had an opportunity to all get together there for that. We're intending, by the way, to do something again in the fall of 2019. There's opportunities to innovate. Our resource management certified professional program, as well as the best practices that we track and communicate to our membership, give you opportunities to innovate, and our RMCP tool set is certainly one of those. And third is to educate. We have classes, both introductory classes in resource management, as well as a full-fledged certification program known as the RMCP, and I'll come back to that one. So that's a brief introduction to the RMI for those of you not familiar with us. And so let's get on with the topic at hand, which is centralized versus decentralized approaches to RM. What's the best approach for my company? Well, I'll start with my first unbiased but very data-based recommendation from the RMI. And that is, in the end, is data doesn't lie. We've been doing research now for about 2.5 years. Our data set in the resource management space is getting larger by the survey as we continue to grow our capabilities here. But the data is really, really clear, is whether you're in an enterprise IT organization or a professional consulting services organization, a centralized approach to RM leads to better utilization of your human capital. We're also working on the correlation of data to project performance and other aspects of benefits from better resource management. But our RMI research shows conclusively that entities are 40% more likely to have lower utilization when they manage their resources in a decentralized fashion. Now, I'll get very specific about what we mean by centralized versus decentralized, so that we're at least working for a common definition of that. But the reasons at a high level, I hope are probably obvious to many of you, is that when we manage things in organizational departments or silos, we tend to trap resources in those organizations. And it's not necessarily an intended effect of that organizational structure and how we execute resource management. It is an operational reality that those types of structures trap resources, and it does it largely because there's generally a lack of visibility to a broader range of staffing choices. If I can start looking at what's available in the enterprise as opposed to within a particular department. Now, many of you on the line probably may perhaps have crossed this boundary, but as I was sharing with the data earlier, is that the majority of organizations still manage in a decentralized fashion, and we think there's lots of upside to rethinking that strategy. The lack of critical mass at a sub-organizational level limits strategic resource planning, and of course, similarly or related to it is the smaller departmental pools limit proactive deployment opportunities. And so, if you had that, if you're an enterprise IT organization or even a PS organization, and you're thinking about we got this web service thing we've been wanting to do for a while and haven't had the resources, and now looking at our cross-enterprise availability, we actually can assemble a team of 10 people to be able to do that. We can go knock that off. If you're in a product development organization, by the way, you can certainly appreciate that, as well as where do I find those pockets of resources that might be available to help with a particular critical project, whether it's internally focused or externally focused. So those are just some of the reasons we see. There are certainly other reasons that may be things that you're incurring. But does this mean we have to centralize for everything for RM? And the answer is no. But there needs to be a fact-based rationale to decentralize, and there are some good reasons for where decentralization might make sense to your organizations. So one is just simply where the critical mass exists at a sub-enterprise level. So if you have literally tens of thousands of, whether they're product developers, enterprise IT folks, or professional consulting services folks that are perhaps broken into regions for things, there may be enough critical mass at those sub-levels to where there's not enough incremental value to centralize everything across those organizations. And so there's one place where we would look at that and say, well, maybe there might be a reason where centralization doesn't make effect, but maybe centralization at some sub-level, whether it's at the geo or something like that, might make sense. Another example might be where you have completely different skill sets. You might have an organization that serves 3 different markets with 3 different products, and the skill sets of the people are entirely different and not cross-functional, meaning they can't be ported from one function to another. So that would be another example of where we would see there might be a reason not to centralize your viewpoint of resource management. Now, if you fit one of those two scenarios, and by the way, there are other reasons why decentralization might make sense for you, are there still benefits to centralizing if we fit in those scenarios? And I would answer the question unequivocally, yes. And that literally comes from not only our research in the RMI, but in our parent company that does consulting as well. We've done literally hundreds of consulting projects in this area. And in the improved utilization of human capital that can come from even centralizing a very, very large organization, we still see benefits from that occurring. Those benefits may or may not, in your mind, outweigh the effort to centralize at that level. And that's just something you'd have to go look at. We definitely see where unnecessary hiring or unnecessary third-party contracting can be reduced by looking across a broader range to include across geographies as an example. Better project performance leading happier customers. You know, the data that our research has been showing consistently over the last 2 years, and by the way, there's a number of other research organizations, TSIA's got data on this, the Gartner Group's got data on this, is resource management is a key driver of project performance, and we believe the number one leading indicator of or reason for project failures, whether you're running off schedule, off budget, or you don't have the right quality, starts with, can I simply get the right person with the right skills in the right place at the right moment in time? So having visibility to what's possible across the enterprise speeds time to staffing, gives you a better choice of how you're going to staff those particular projects, and we believe in the end leads to happier customers, whether they're internal or external. And on top of that, we're going to focus a lot more on in 2019 is proactive employee engagement. Is clearly in 2019 and beyond as the war for talent continues to heat up, the more we can do in the area of proactive employee engagement, the better we're going to do in not only attracting the best and the brightest, but retaining the best and the brightest. And a centralized view to our opportunities gives us an opportunity to explore project assignments that meet both the company need and employee career aspirations. We're going to expound upon this a lot in our March 27th Power Up. And we have data that clearly shows that a better employee engagement leads to improved employee morale. And that's clearly another key benefit for all our organizations as we think about how to utilize the centralized resource management environment. So I said I'd talk a little bit about definitionally what do I mean by centralized versus decentralized, just so as you exit this Power Up session, if you have any questions, hopefully I'll make this real clear, is what it is, and I'll talk about what it's not here in a moment, but what decentralization means versus decentralized is decentralization creates a transparent view, normally in what we would call a skills database, of all the enterprise resources, who's available, when, what competencies they have, their career aspirations, and those types of things. And so we get this transparent view of the assets of the corporation, which are at the enterprise level. That we centralize our staffing processes so that project staffing is optimized, again, at the enterprise level, not at the department level. This is an area where Thomas mentioned is an area of conflict and controversy, and causes organizations that have grown up where people managers make all of the decisions on where their people, what projects are on, how they're assigned. That's something that clearly changes it should change in a centralized model, and I'll talk specifically about what that means or what it doesn't mean, because the traditional HR and people management processes do need to continue on in any regard. Via agreed processes does allow for management involvement in staffing, so we don't suggest in a centralized model that managers are completely removed from the decisions related to staffing projects. There are always going to be opportunities or reasons why a manager's involvement, whether it's personnel issues, employee, ill or they got some special training need, whatever it happens to be. Perhaps there's a personnel conflict with a particular client. So there are reasons at times why managers should be involved in these things, but they should be more the exception, not the rule. Creating a centralized approach in organizations to development, deployment, and governance of RMI processes and supporting automation. Good standardization in most of them, just like in project management, leads to better project performance, and resource management is no exception. So the creation of a resource management office in some form or fashion and standardization of resource management processes across the organization, we see delivers substantial benefits to the organization than those that do not. And then centralized enterprise-wide planning for project-based human capital makes a pretty big difference relative to centralized versus not centralizing your organization. So, because you can, again, as you're thinking about 2019, we talked with a lot of organizations about their budget cycles, and many of you are probably winding up your 2019 planning, but the better that you can plan on a broader basis allows you to get to a better answer, not only at the enterprise level, but generally at the departmental level as well. So that's a little bit about what centralization is versus decentralized resource management. So let me talk for a moment about what it's not. It's not a centralization of traditional management practices, hiring, firing, departmental planning, compensation planning. People still need to report to a people manager. We don't think that changes at all in this environment, and that traditional relationship is important for people to know who they work for, who do they want to have concern, need, a desire, they want to communicate, they want to complain about something, they have a suggestion for improvement. People need a people manager, and that we don't think should change. It's certainly not a replacement for traditional HR support and processes. Human resources has always played an important role in organizations and certainly will continue to do so. But there are new opportunities where HR and the RMO can work collaboratively on things to make resource management work better for the organization. And one of those, which we'll talk more about at our next Power Up, is employee engagement. There are a lot of things where an RMO can create opportunities to help HR and to help the delivery teams of doing a better job of connecting people and their desires, aspirations, and career needs, development needs with the project needs of our clients, whether those clients are internal or external. And then it also, by the way, is not a complete removal, as I mentioned earlier, on the prior slide, of the people manager from staffing choices. Exception cases should still be possible, but not the norm. We don't want the departmental managers involved in every single staffing decision. That clearly is not needed in most organizations. So that's a bit about what it's not. So when I start to compare centralized versus decentralized, this slide kind of basically shows, what we think some of the resource management attributes are in a decentralized model. Your practices for RM are distributed. They may be different department to department, and the staffing is clearly performed by the line managers. In a centralized model, we centralize into an RMO. Those organizations, resources belong to the enterprise, and they're deployed in that manner. As I shared, the line managers are not removed from that process, but there is some kind of an involvement or exception process where they participate. And there are resource managers to help to facilitate that process between the line managers and the RMO. And then there's these hybrid models where, and by the way, it's often a first step for organizations is creating an RMO that creates a standardization of processes, creates a transparency into the resources of the organization, and that's typically a stepping stone. And so, again, the data says that when you get to the centralized, you have a much better opportunity to do a better job of deploying human capital more in line with the needs of your business, and do it at a lower cost to your organization, producing better project performance and lots of other benefits. So the moral to the story is centralization of RM processes is simply better. Data doesn't lie, and at some level, centralization is the way to go with resource management for all the reasons we shared earlier. And as I shared earlier, there are times where some decentralization may make sense. And there are examples that I provided in this deck of where we think some of those key ones happen to be. So as we're headed into the Q&A section, I want to just take a moment, as we always do, to just share again, if you want to learn best practice in resource management, we have a program. It's called the RMCP program, Resource Management Certified Professional, that gives resource managers and RMO leaders, and by way service delivery leaders for professional consulting services, enterprise IT, and now product development, gives you an opportunity to learn best practices, to gain access to a resource center, and to collaborate with your industry peers. And there are now more than 270 companies that are committed to putting people through this program, and it's growing every day for us. The RMCP program itself there's two versions of it. There's a 3-day version of it that we do in class here at our classroom facilities here in Cincinnati, Ohio, or we deliver this in an online instructor-led version that's delivered in 2-hour segments for 6 weeks. There is some prerequisite studies, a little bit of homework on the online version of it. There's a recertification process and a certification exam that are applied at the end of the course. And today the price is $1,795. Through the end of this year, the price is going up by $100, so beginning January 1. If you sign up for any class between now and the end of the year for 2019, you get the advantage of today's price versus the increased price next year. By the way, if you're a PMP, from the PMI, we offer PDUs for taking our certification class as well, as indicated there on the slide. So we teach our just-in-time resourcing solution and the 6 building blocks we think is a good disciplined approach to resource management, and includes creating a good skills inventory, a staffing mechanism, a view into the future with the forecasting, a way to put those things together in some kind of a sourcing and development approach to thinking about how do I move my talent and workforce towards what I'm going to need in the future, not where it needs to be today. Supporting technology, we address both in PSA and PPM tools and how you make those go to work for you in a resource management environment. And then certainly last but not least is any good process has governance metrics and things, and we teach that as well. If you go to the website, you'll see there is material schedules out there. The next in-class is coming up late January here in Cincinnati, and there is some early bird pricing for that, save some additional money, and our next online session begins February 13th as well. So you can apply online, you can pay online through our website with the credit card. So also, just a quick commercial, as I mentioned, employee engagement is clearly one of the hottest topics in the industry today. In any of those environments I mentioned, professional consulting services, enterprise IT, or product development, talent wars are heating up, and so the need for better employee engagement is growing. So we're going to have a session on best practices in utilizing your RMO to improve employee engagement. We're also going to have a guest speaker, Kimberly Carrieri from Dell EMC, talking about how they're utilizing their RMO to improve the engagement with their employees as well. So that's a must attend, don't miss, and hope you'll sign up for our next Power Up session. I want to thank our sponsors again, Maven Link, Evelyn Tenrocks, and Keyed-In Solutions for taking the time to support our time and money to support our Power Up sessions. We really appreciate that. So with that, I'm going to move back to Thomas, and we'll enter our Q&A section of this webcast.
Okay, great. Thanks, Randy. Yeah, I'd like to use the rest of our time here for the Q&A as these questions are starting to come in. And I picked this one to start out with, Randy, because this came in, but I'd be shocked if there weren't a few more people on the line who weren't running into this issue as well. She asked, we've tried to centralize resource management, but the department managers were hugely resistant to it. So we went back to the old way. Any tips on how to address this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've never heard that question before. Yeah, that's part of the organizations that tried it and gave up because of too much internal organizational resistance. And generally, change management is a really important part of this process of moving from decentralized to centralized, because it is a big shift in how things used to work. And so I'd suggest a few things to how you manage that. Is one is to help education of the organization as to why we're doing it. And there is a ton of data. By the way, the RMI can be very helpful with, through a lot of our white papers and research, that moving to a centralized environment helps both the people that are participating in that ecosystem, meaning your delivery resources. And by the way, I would just tell you, it takes the staffing job off the hands of the delivery managers and gives them more time to focus on their people and their customers and things. So once organizations really help educate and help see what it's like on the other side of this transformation, use good change management, usually the resistance goes down. And once they've made the change and are making that, have made that shift, we clearly see a change in behavior and attitude, and just makes it easier. So anyway, I'm going to address. I see another question that came in a panel here.
Yep.
Thomas, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump onto this one.
Yep, go for it.
I won't mention it, the company, but this particular company said centralization has had massive benefits for our organization due to this. It raises an interesting question. What are your thoughts on the role of resource management in SaaS model versus hosted solutions, i.e. the move to cloud versus non-cloud native companies with a centralized RMO often means hours a day of effort included in subscription. From a support perspective, the staffing structure is considerably different than that of a standard SOW. And it's a long question. And assignment effort of resource management because the work is not or cannot be fully planned may be a separate power up. Yeah, I would just say, as I was reading through that question, that has a lot of the same attributes to the nature of the problem as does moving to agile environments where I'm doing things in smaller increments and with a lot less, I'll just say, predictability. But by the way, there's plenty of answers on the agile side, and we've been helping organizations, clearly with that. I would just say that to answer this person's question, the process solves problems like this in a wonderful way, and while the staffing structure is considerably different, what it just does is we deploy our staffing allocation models and things. We adjust those to affect the fact that the type of work being done and the hours of the day it's being done, the iterations that are necessary for that typical type of project are considered as a part of our staffing mechanisms. I saw a note, maybe a separate power up that probably would be a really good topic, and maybe something we can think about writing a white paper on, and we'll be thinking about that one. So sure. Anyway, okay. Is there? Yeah. There's.
Yeah, I had one come in here. You had your initial research slide up there, and this one came in about accessing the research. I know we have some new folks on the line, so I'll quickly share this. All our research reports are available on the website, resourcemanagementinstitute.com, under our RMI surveys webpage. You can download any of our research reports. Gosh, I think we're on 6 or 7 now. You do have to be a member of the RMI, but as Randy mentioned, it's quick and easy to join. And then you'll have access to all those reports. So yes, all of our research is available on our website. Quickly here, actually, let me jump in here. We're right at the top of the hour, but we do have a few more questions that have come in. I do want to answer those. So for those of you who want to stay on the line, we are going to finish answering some of these questions, but we are respectful of your time. I know a bunch of you probably need to drop off. I want to thank you for attending today's Power Up session, and thank you for the support for the RMI. And mentioned, be on the lookout for our Power Up in March. We'll be publishing the date and the registration link for that shortly. Yeah, Randy, I wanted to jump in and answer a few more of these questions. We had one come in asking about utilization. It said, how much lower is utilization in decentralized versus centralized models?
It varies
Yep.
pretty substantially depending on the company, and so we are working on trying to get, I'd just say narrow the window with some ways to describe, here's where lower and what were the attributes of that organization versus another. But we didn't haven't gotten that data into that, haven't done that analysis yet. Other than I'd just say that we typically will see a 5 to 15% improvement in utilization of onboard resources when organizations move to a decentralized. That's a window I'm pretty comfortable with. We've seen that hundreds of times, and that's usually where organizations will end up. And it's, usually when we throw that number out to people, look and they say, "Oh, how can that be?" And I would just say that when we've done in-depth analysis at an organizational level, 100% of the time, and I say that with great confidence, 100% of the time, we find that there's a bell curve in your organization, and that bell curve looks like this: is you got about 10 to 15% of your organization of people that are working tons of overtime because everybody's trying to draw on those are the very best people you have, and they tend to be the first ones that leave, and they get burned out, and that happens. Then there's this big group in the middle on the bell curve that are kind of in the norm of where you want them to be from a utilization standpoint. And then there are 10 to 20% at the bottom that are doing almost nothing, or they're really low. And we hear the 17 reasons why we have all these people. Now, the only reason I think that fits in there is where I have, I'm onboarding lots of people, and I got onboarding time to do that. And I'll, immediately say, okay, I get that, but what have you done to reduce the amount of time it takes you to onboard? So there's a lot to be gained there. And by the way, that's just better utilization of resources. There's a clear link between that and also better project performance. And then you got to calculate the cost of what did it cost me to redo that project or have to address a customer satisfaction problem. So there's a lot of other benefits. Right.
Okay, quickly here, did you see this one? What would be the first step / tactics to decentralizing at a high level to work maybe into some 2019 plans?
So, first steps to decentralizing I'm wondering if the question was intended to be centralizing versus decentralizing. So we're working into, because, we're trying to convince people to not decentralize, to centralize.
Yep.
So I'm going to answer the question in that way is that, if I went back to the page that people can get from the deck that showed the 3 different models, going to the hybrid model is a nice first step. It would include creating a transparent view into all the resources, starting to get people to populate the skills database, keeping that skills database updated, and all the things we teach in the RMCP course is putting those 6 building blocks in place and stopping short of, I'm going to pull the trigger and have resource managers and take over the staffing mechanisms as well. That's a nice first step. And by the way, again, I would, couple that with a clear change management approach that we're going to take the time to educate people, help people understand why we're doing this, where we're headed, the benefits to the managers, to the company, to the employees. These things all work in everybody's mutual advantage.
Okay, one more here. Do managers have any involvement in the deployment of people they manage in a centralized model?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd encourage people to go back to the deck. The people still need a manager to report to. They to come in and talk about their issues or challenges. Something that's come up. They have to take sick leave. Compensation discussions, performance reviews. All those things still have to go on. And so we don't advocate changing that at all. This whole angle of employee engagement that we see is a huge benefit to even the line manager, who gets a better opportunity now to help their employees with an easier way to get a broader view into what's possible for that employee. And that usually works to everybody's benefit again.
Okay. This one came in about the webinar being posted online. I'll share that again with folks. Yes, not only will we post the recording online, but you will receive an email with a link to the recording. So please feel free to share that also with colleagues who might not have been able to attend today. Randy, you see anything else in here?
Yeah, there's one that was that's got several. It came in several pieces here, and I think I can address it. Is that where we have RMs in multiple countries and they have local knowledge? What's recommended in this regard is that having local knowledge is certainly important, and we would say leverage that into the model. But local knowledge doesn't mean that you can't make centralized deployment decisions for an organization where you have multiple countries. I personally ran an organization with 1,600 people around 31 different countries. We were doing 100 projects a month, and we did all of our deployments and staff selections centrally. But we took advantage of local knowledge as it was applicable and appropriate, and we built our process to make sure that was a part of our criteria. But we were careful to make sure that resource managers didn't get in that mode of, well, everything because we're in XYZ country, no one else can know what we need to do in this country but us, and that just is not. It's never been the case. And but local knowledge, we do think is really important. We do think it should be incorporated into, but we don't think it should be overriding in or in any way inhibit a move to a centralized approach to resource management.
Okay. Okay, very good. Well, I think we've answered most that came in. I know we went past the top of the hour, but again, thought it was important to keep answering these questions that are coming in. So, again, thank you for everyone on the line who stuck around for the rest of the Q&A session. And again, thank you for your support of the Resource Management Institute. Randy, I'd like to thank you as well for your time presenting this topic. As we saw with the questions coming in, really hits the mark with a lot of folks.
Yeah, thank you everyone else, everyone for participating. Thanks again to our sponsors, and appreciate it. I hope to see you all, talk to you all on March 27th.
Very good. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.